Hello and happy Friday. I'm Anson and I hope your new year is off to a good start. We're now in week 2 already of our year opening series that we're calling Steward of the King, God's Resources in Your Hand. It's a good time to have a conversation like this because we're looking ahead to the year and we want to think about how we're stewarding the time and talent and treasure that God has given us at this moment in time, in this year that He has put before us. So we opened our series last week looking at creation, Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, and the commission that God gave them to be stewards of the good world He created. And we saw this principle that our stewardship should reflect God's ownership. And specifically, God's ownership is exercised through giving rather than taking or keeping. And we see this throughout creation and really throughout the Bible. God pours out over and above the resources that He's given us in His world out of His love and generosity. And so as we steward the resources that ultimately He owns, because He owns everything, it should be a reflection of His heart, His love, His generosity. We also saw last week how that pattern was broken when Adam and Eve chose instead to exercise their stewardship by taking the one limitation that God had given them, even though He wanted them to freely use all of His creation except for the one fruit of the tree that He had told them not to eat of. But they took more, and that broke that pattern. And so we're going to be looking for the next 4 weeks at how God rebuilt that pattern of stewardship throughout the scriptures so that you and I might recover that blessing of being the stewards that He created us to be. So we're going to look through the Old Testament this week, different ways that God talks about how we use our time, how we use our talent, and how we use our treasure. And the thing that maybe is surprising and really an encouraging thing and really reflects God's heart of love and generosity is that in each one of these, when we faithfully steward the resources God has given us, He promises us blessing. So in Exodus 20, when He talks about how to use our time in the 6-day pattern with a day of rest for the Sabbath, He blesses us, He promises us restoration and rest as a rhythm in our lives. Proverbs 22:29 talks about when we use the skills that God has given us, it gains us honor and influence. It says that when we are skilled in our work, we'll stand before kings, not before people of low reputation. So there's blessing and promise there. And then in Malachi 3:10, there's even a challenge from God that when we steward our resources in the way that He's called us to, He says, watch and see what I will do. See if I won't pour out blessing on you more than you ever imagined. And so it's an invitation in the Old Testament to put ourselves out there and just try God and see if stewardship His way yields the kind of blessing that He promises. And so it's going to be a challenge for us. I'm excited to sort of unpack this week what this means throughout the Old Testament. And we're going to look into the blessings that God promises. And my challenge for you and me is that in 2024, we would lean into that. We would take God up on His offer, test Him, and just see what He will do in our lives when we do stewardship His way. So it's a good series we're in. I hope you'll engage with us throughout this next few weeks. Hope to see you Sunday. But until then, have a great weekend.